These reviews are performed by a trained professional. Please do not try this at home.
Generations. Much can be learned from past generations. For past generations write history. They become history. The past may have already been written, but the future awaits a new generation.
Oh my God! It's Smackdown Vs Raw! Sports entertainment will never be the same!
Welcome to the channel. In case you didn't know, I occasionally talk about professional wrestling games, and today we are tasked with taking apart the Smackdown vs Raw series of games in 5 minutes or less. Use the word games twice then, very unprofessional. That's right, years of effort, blood, sweat and tears condensed into a 5-minute long rant about how good the soundtracks are, essentially. In each of these titles, well, at least I'll try not to spend my entire time slot talking about music, but we'll see how we do. Now, in order to keep this actually a doable task, I'm going to be introducing the game, and that won't count towards my time. But when we do get down to the fine details of each title, we'll be taking a look at some important factors for each of the games on offer. These sections will be broken into gameplay, soundtrack, entrances, commentary, and the season mode that's on offer. Now, if I run over in one of the sections and go under in another section, I will allow myself a little bit of breathing room. But I promise you, I'll try my best. 7 games, 5 sections each, 5 minutes. Let's go. Smackdown vs Raw is an incredibly troubled start to the series. Honestly, down to no fault of the creators. It was just a really terrible time to be a professional wrestling fan. Although Chris Benoit got to main event WrestleMania, the incredible void left by the departure of guys like Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, Jeff Hardy, the retirement of Stone Cold Steve Austin, and many more who had completely vanished by this point. Even The Rock was down to once-a-year visits to the company, whilst The Undertaker had fully transitioned to his undead gimmick over on SmackDown. If you wasn't driven away by the awful invasion angle in 2001, you had managed to hold on through Triple H's reign of terror in 2002, you were treated to Eddie Guerrero winning the championship from Brock, only to lose it on a technicality for JBL. Never achieving such heights again, and that was just SmackDown. Raw saw the debut and continued push of Eugene, who overshadowed guys like Benoit and Orton. We look at Randy Orton. He was pigeonholed to be the top guy of Raw, though he just couldn't get his shit together long enough at the time to actually carry the company in that role, being completely eclipsed by Batista in December. Well, to start, the gameplay of Smackdown vs Raw is fairly solid. It's a little more involved than what was on offer in Here Comes the Pain and introduces entirely new concepts, like minigame infused battles and the ability to start matches with lockups. Smackdown vs Raw is also the first title to include dirty or clean, which seems strange. One side booed and one side cheered, and having their own secret ability like powering up like Goku and using said power to become invincible for a short while. Whereas the evil dirty heels instead score a massive low blow on their opponents. These two alignments are powered up by either hitting moves on the top rope or taunting, or attacking the referee or taking off the ring's turnbuckle pad. There's Create a Championship mode, Create a Pay-Per-View, Challenge mode with different difficulty levels on offer with different challenges, which helps to unlock alternative attires and arenas. It also has online play, though that can only be bra and panties matches or single matches. It also had 4 championships, down from the previous 9 in the Here Comes the Pain. There's no tag titles, no women's title, it's fucking dumb.
Soundtrack.
Fire blind, condition your light. Now I knock your ways, but they're just like mine.
So this is a massive turning point for pretty much all wrestling games, because holy shit, the music in the next few Smackdown vs Raw games go absolutely so hard that I'm still listening to it all these years later. Not only do we have the main song of this title from Powerman 5000, but we also have another song from that band, as well as 2 songs from the mighty Breaking Benjamin, who at this point would have just had their track debuted in Halo 2. There's Zebraheads, hot of their appearance in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, Stars of Beyond, who had the same song featured in Need for Speed from around that time, as well as Showcause Bonecracker, that recently appeared in SSX Tricky. There's Bring the Noise by Public Enemy and Anthrax, a song that has appeared in so many different games that it basically has its own Wikipedia page.
Lita. I can't believe she's a girl.
Given commentary was absolutely absent from Here Comes the Pain, it's quite an interesting inclusion here in SmackDown vs Raw. It's very much a beta version of what's going to be presented going forward, this time around only including both Michael Cole and Taz, as well as JR and King on their respective rants. Something really interesting and genuinely appreciated. Adding a different kind of freshness to each of these shows that you happen to do battle. It's a million times better than just bring it slow. That's personal preference, because some people probably love how terrible that is.
Season
Mode this time around, they really just went all out, having voices for every single wrestler that you come across, apart from the one that you choose, which is weird. These stories are so strange and have quite a few different twists and turns, but are mainly to do with divas and having them join your side as a manager for future matches. The divas also have some strange cutscenes with you just messing around with them backstage. This includes you walking into the women's locker room, and apparently that just works as a pickup line. Eventually, Mr. McMahon himself will approach you and offer to help you out in winning the World Championship. If you agree, you will basically become a bad guy, and if you disagree, you become a good guy, which means every match from that point forward, you just kind of lose anyway because you're against the system. It's not great. Before pay-per-view starts, there are hype videos building up the feud that you just played out, including footage you didn't see because it didn't actually happen. JR and King talk you up and discuss whether you're the favourite or the underdog heading into that match. It's all fairly decent, it's just a little too restricted. Can I not just be a lonely guy at the bottom of the card or a tag team guy? Do I always have to be the main event player? Boo. The entrances in SmackDown vs Raw are fine. Definitely a slight step up from Here Comes the Pain, but it's the models this time around that really shine through. Just brilliant looking textures, and each wrestler has a whole new, much higher body count and appearance. This time around just totally eclipsed what came beforehand. Guys like Rob Van Dam, who looked good before, look even better now. And people like Batista having really small details just really shine through, like his hair and tattoos. The main menu of SmackDown vs Raw is like no other, having you choose which side you prefer to be on. And your decision will become the default from that point going forward. So really it boils down to whether you want the women from SmackDown dancing on the side of the screen, or whether you prefer the Raw side of things with Trish and Stacey. You have the ability to change it back at any point, but there you go. There's also the option to have them in their bra and panties just in case your mom isn't in the room when you're playing. The Royal Rumble has a new ring out feature to it, meaning you actually have to try it instead of just picking somebody to just keep kicking them until they're gone. And that's about it for SmackDown vs Raw.
SmackDown vs Raw 2006.
The main focus of Ukes and THQ was to focus primarily on realism, whilst implementing several new features, whilst moving away from the much beloved arcade-like gameplay from the original SmackDown titles. 2006 released in 2005 and was the first to have an entry on the PSP, and the PSP version had an exclusive poker game, which is incredible, though also kind of a negative. There's secret wrestlers within the PSP version that can only be unlocked on said system and then ported straight into the PS2 version directly. SmackDown vs Raw's gameplay, appearance, and overall presentation is absolutely amazing. I remember being incredibly impressed in 2005, even in direct comparison to what came after. As the last official PlayStation 2 only title, it really pushed the console to its limit. This year includes the Buried Alive match, Fulfill Your Fantasy and General Manager, and Create an Entrance mode, finally allowing you to tweak the entrances of your favourite wrestlers like never before. GM mode is something that people have just missed ever since and really did impress. SmackDown vs Raw 2006 official soundtrack includes the absolutely incredible Pieces by Dark New Day, a super band formed from around this time period and has gone on to become one of my favourite songs of all time. There's an awful remix of Symphony of Destruction, some terrible rap songs, the debut of the excellent Dillinger Escape Plan, bringing math metal to the forefront, and even Static X's inclusion with a track from their album Star War. Commentary in SmackDown vs Raw 2006 includes most of the lines from the first title in the series, though there is an improvement on wrestlers themselves and even some funny banter from JR and King, and they reference recent events, such as the time that JR pinned Triple H in the middle of the ring. It's a million times better than Just Bring It, and a slight improvement on SmackDown vs Raw's original offering. Season mode lasts for 2 in-game years, one for Raw and one for SmackDown, and your goal, obviously, is to win both brands' 2 main championships. and apparently contains 100 different motion-captured cinematic cutscenes with real-time storytelling, improved voice acting. I can attest to this, as it's possible to play through as Hulk Hogan and have every single one of your cutscenes and interactions actually voiced by the Hulkster himself, which is pretty incredible, till he says the N-word. Obviously, if you pick from certain stars, you are locked from certain storylines. Obviously, if you pick certain stars, you are locked from certain storylines, essentially because the wrestler needs to be there saying their line. There's an ECW takeover storyline where Rob Van Dam becomes the WWE champion and rechristens it the title to the ECW title. This happened a full year before the story would actually play out on real TV. It's kind of crazy to think about. Also, there's a story where Eddie Guerrero is thrown into a casket, which is kind of wild. His story with The Undertaker is actually a major plus point for this title, as it's fully voiced and motion captured. It's really great stuff. This title includes ECW's One Night Stand Arena, which is definitely cool, as well as Mania 21, Backlash, and a few others from 2005. Exhibition mode this time around includes a title match option, which includes the 2 major titles, mid-card titles, and a couple bonus ones, bringing the total up from 4 the year prior to 10 this time around. Much better. And the ability to compete for them within this mode is an absolute bonus. There's a fully customizable locker room this time around, though it's fairly useless outside of season mode. But that being said, you can view your titles in 3D and see the former champions who have held it. And that's about it for Smackdown vs Raw 2006. Boom. The gameplay of Smackdown vs Raw 2007 moves away even more so from the arcade style that was found previously, leaning more into the ultimate control moves, giving you the ability to pick up and move around your opponent in the ring, transitioning to different moves before throwing them straight down, whether that be inside of the ring or onto the announce table or steel steps at ringside. It's something that people honestly really miss, though it has returned to recent versions of the WWE series of games. 2007 also includes the ability to fight in the crowd, something that wasn't actually needed and doesn't really appear realistic, but it's still pretty cool. There's a small area that contains some electrical devices which you can throw your opponent into, as well as a table that can be set up and some scaffolding that can be jumped off. There's an expanded general manager mode and a great fun challenge mode with a massive list of matches that include a batshit crazy finale where you play as Mickie James and have to beat the Great Khali, something I actually accomplished, because I changed their moves, which is cheating. 2007's soundtrack includes some of the best albums that come out from around that time period, highlighted in my mind by the excellent Nonpoint, not just including Bullet With A Name, but the incredible Alive and Kicking, both taken from the album To The Pain. I'm a big fan. A track that honestly kind of saved my life back in the end of 2006. There's Stitches by Allel, Godsmack, and a couple of tracks from the much beloved 3 Days Grace. There's Rise Against and the badass sounds on Blackstone Cherry, making everybody fall in love with their southern blues sound and rock and roll. Lonely Train is an absolute banger. There's a few rap tracks and they're all incredibly annoying. Smackdown vs Raw 2007's commentary once again takes the basics, basically delivered in the last 2 games, and adds them together and adds some greater detail. There's still no way to have 2 wrestlers spoken about whilst they're against each other. They still have a lot to say about whoever you've chosen and who you're against, but just not in like a versus kind of way. Moves are called well, with no major repetition, with only bits and pieces being heard on repeat. 2007 season mode has some incredible weird moments that can only really be seen within this title season, with fully voiced characters this time around having a ton of great options here, meaning guys like Ric Flair, Roddy Piper, The Boogeyman, William Regal, The Undertaker, Trevor Murdoch, and a ton of others are all voiced throughout every story you end up entwined within. 2007 goes a little wild this time, including Chris Benoit feuding with The Undertaker, creating some strange moments, especially given Benoit's death a year later, which really brings some stuff into a new light. But that aside, there's just nothing really like it. 2007's entrances are the best yet, almost motion tracking the wrestlers themselves, having them look incredibly lifelike, including camera cuts and pyro within the ring and the stage itself. The locker room makes its return, this time home in the challenge mode, as well as the championships that you unlock and trophies gained from season mode. Again, it's all completely customizable.
6 kills.
Smackdown vs Raw 2008 was built on an Indian burial ground, which makes sense considering its tagline was that it also featured the reanimated corpse of ECW. Sometimes dead is better. So what's Smackdown vs Raw 2008 really lacking? Well, star power, Although we finally get the reintroduction of Jeff Hardy to this series of games, we lose Rob Van Dam, Kurt Angle, The Big Show, Chris Jericho, who actually made his return the week after this game released, The Miz, most of the new breed aren't present, Brian Kendrick and Paul London are again absent despite holding the SmackDown tag belts for an entire year. Though we do get excellent inclusions like Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer, The Sandman and Sabu's only WWE game appearance to date. Some people honestly really love this game, though it's just one of those things. 90% of the planet thinks it's the worst title, so of course it has fans who will come out of the woodwork to defend it. Hell, I'll get flamed for having an opinion one way or another, so I am remaining neutral. It's the death of the series. Wait, I forgot to mention Marcus Corvon's inclusion. SmackDown vs Raw 2008 currently sits at a 71% on Metacritic. To put that in perspective, 2007 received an 81%. Not great. This time around, SmackDown vs Raw 2008's addiction to creating the most realistic game ever meant that this game moves so slow. This leads to people basically playing games that take hours. On top of that, they made the incredibly smart decision to introduce 8 diverse wrestling styles, limiting wrestlers' movesets up and down the board. Of course, it did add some abilities, where the powerhouse style now allows you to throw wrestlers around the ring, the brawler style lets you punch quicker than normal. Technical wrestlers can reverse everything, which is lovely. High flyers can dive a lot more, including springboard moves, which are now exclusive to people with this trait, and the ability to Dark Souls roll away from danger. Showman allows you to gain momentum from taunting and stealing people's finishing moves. There's also the Dirty mode, taken straight from 2006, Submission mode, which allows you to use submissions, and there's Hardcore Wrestlers, style which allows wrestlers to use their blood to fuel their momentum. I definitely went into this video knowing that WWE Smackdown vs Raw 2008 soundtrack was probably my favourite, and upon comparing it to recent years, it's honestly a lot harder to back up than I thought. But man, Seven Dust, Chauvel, More Non-Point, Hell Yeah, Puddle of Mud, Project 86, and the introduction to one of my favourite bands, AM Conspiracy. I know you haven't heard of them, nobody has. It's a new band formed from the old lead singer of Drowning Pool. Yes, the one that didn't accidentally overdose at the time of filming. That's dark. So this band came along, released one EP, and then completely disappeared. Thanks, like I didn't have enough issues of abandonment already. The commentary this time around gives us 3 unique options: Michael Cole and JBL, Taz and Joey Styles for ECW, and JR and the King for Raw. This means that each person had to record lines for every wrestler individually, something that is quite the task if you stop to really think about it. It's also kind of obvious why this game didn't last too long. I can't imagine the work put into such a thing, especially as they changed commentators almost monthly at this point in time. Season mode this time around has become 24/7 mode and leads on the idea that you're becoming a professional wrestler yourself, though you do have the ability to choose your own superstar. Unfortunately, this list only includes 19 wrestlers to choose from. The main hook is that you can choose how to spend your time during your time off. You know, the one thing that you don't want to do in a wrestling game, you just want to kind of wrestle. You can train your muscles or your attitude. Yeah, you read magazine articles and answer your phone. It's boring and tedious. We're using cutscene after cutscene between matches that include pointless stories that involve you trying out for film roles instead of becoming WWE champion. Luckily, there's GM mode, and it's fine. It's not the best, not the worst. It just includes the ECW brand this time around, and the last time that we would see this mode for over a decade. There's a draft, there's rivalries. The goal is to beat the other brands, but it's rather restrictive. Most matches haven't been changed this time around. Things like backstage brawl and table matches are pretty much the same as they were before. SmackDown vs Raw 2008 was overshadowed by its bigger brothers, with a major drop on the count of playable wrestlers. The little to no updates to the older features that are included, the Creator Championship mode and such. It's really easy to see why people were so harsh on 2008 upon its release, and especially so looking back at it. Finisher moves contain a gunshot sound this time around for whatever reason, as well as echoing, and Extreme Rules matches allow you to set tables on fire as well, and you can choose the weapons that are available underneath the ring before you start a match. In 2008, tiny little world titles, visible Hell in a Cell matches, great soundtrack, bad game. SmackDown vs Raw 2009 was a game that decided to have a focus on tag team wrestling, with Shawn Michaels and Triple H on the front cover of the game, and DX versus the Hardy Boys being the main match type that was shown in the trailers building the game up. A match that would never happen, as both teams were primarily babyfaces during their later runs. strange. 2009 also included the dying days of ECW, with a tiny roster containing Taz in his last appearance within the WWE. We had the return of Big Show and Chris Jericho, two of our personal favourites. We also finally get the appearance of both Brian Kendrick and Paul London, which was ridiculously too little too late. They should have been there in 2007 and 2008, but that's negativity for negativity's sake. This title also included the incredible debut of Masked Man and Tony. There's 22 people on SmackDown's roster, 13 people on ECW, and around 30 on Raw's. As noted previously, tag team matches are the #1 priority of SmackDown vs Raw 2009. In a time period that has no tag teams, the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, Rated RKO, DX, Taker and Kane. Sure, hot tags are great and I understand that tag team matches do need to be improved, but as the tagline for an entire game, strange. Nonetheless, gameplay is finally better again. It's faster. There's ways to store your signature moves to use later, which would lead to you having an actual finishing move. Fighting styles, create a championship, the buried alive match are all gone. Fighting in the crowd, which sold the last few games, is also removed, which is for the better. This title also included the ability to make your own finishing move, something that I actually went viral with 15 years ago. The soundtrack to 2009 is surprisingly full of bangers. Stereogram, Disturbed, Blood Simple, Six, The Ixies, and Egypt Central all have great sounding tracks in this title, and POD make their epic return to your ears. As we'll go into more detail in the next section of this mini review, the commentary this year is kind of astounding. Really is amazing what they can pull off if they actually bother. Matches within the career modes have incredible details added to them, all delivered through the commentary during the matches. When John Cena wrestles a tribute to the troops, the commentary talks about how much this means to him. When The Undertaker pulls off spooky stuff with Santino and Finlay, the commentary talks about what they're witnessing and how they can't believe it. When CM Punk and Jeff Hardy have a match, the commentary discusses what a dream match it is, happening before their very eyes between two incredibly talented and popular superstars. It really does show what the team behind this department can do. Of course, we have JR and King called in Raw, Michael Cole and the coach called in SmackDown, which is weird. Taz is obviously on ECW with Joey Styles, though for some reason, occasionally you hear Joey on other shows, which is just really strange.
Officially started the road to WrestleMania with the Royal Rumble.
Road to WrestleMania this year makes its debut and is just an incredible example of what these games can really deliver when it comes to storytelling. This includes handcrafted stories, multiple people, with handwritten commentary lines and crowd chants, meaning that if two people face off, not only will the fans react as such, but the commentary will actually highlight the two people in the ring at that very point. The Undertaker, John Cena, Chris Jericho, Batista, Ray, and Triple H all have their own stories that can be played through in any order, with The Undertaker's being the strangest. There's CM Punk's journey to the ECW title, which includes a strange twist where they just get rid of Extreme Rules matches. But yes, this means that actual stories are back in SmackDown vs Raw games after being missing from last year. And all good things require a sacrifice, as my GM mode is completely missing. There's career mode, it sucks. It's like the WCW career path where you choose a title and compete for it. That's it. This game includes highlight reels, which allow you to take videos of your matches and then you can basically go in and clip and edit them to your heart's content later on. Something I just didn't really care about at the time. In 2008 we already had YouTube, so I guess this was better than nothing, but the world titles are still ridiculously small and most wrestlers don't look anything like how they're meant to, which is a shame. But we do have Inferno matches this time around. There's new camera angles at ringside. It's awful. Unfortunately, it's something that will continue through games after this one. It's a pretty cool detail, but you can actually import your roster from 2009 straight into WWE Legends of WrestleMania. But you can't import that roster back into this game, which is a shame.
Apocalyptic.
Releasing towards the end of 2009, a time period which included several ups and downs throughout the year, mainly circling around the likes of CM Punk and Jeff Hardy feuding on SmackDown before Jeff made another exit from the company, and an entire year based on Raw around Triple H, Randy Orton and John Cena. ECW is about to be done for good, with Christian returning and holding the ECW title for most of that calendar year, and overall things are just kind of there. My memories of watching wrestling in 2009 were sometimes catching SmackDown, seeing some excellent in-ring action between Chris Jericho and Rey Mysterio, and seeing up-and-coming stars like Kofi Kingston, Evan Bourne and the Hart Dynasty. It was really an interesting time period for a little while there, especially as TNA started to cool off with its main event Mafia angle. The roster found in this game in 2010 is also pretty decent, including a wide range of guys from that current selection and some legends. That being said though, Stone Cold Steve Austin is paid DLC, either be in a pre-order or by using your sweet Microsoft points. Smackdown vs Raw 2010 sets itself apart from the other titles by having the menu take place in an actual wrestling facility. From the word go, you can jump straight into the ring and begin messing around with the controls, much like how Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 allows you to skate in the main menu. This title follows that trend and is genuinely such an awesome addition. The camera cuts and the way that the camera moves around the screen this time really does add to the presentation and adds on to making this game look and feel as realistic as possible. After every major move, the camera will change its location. Maybe it's based on where you're standing in the ring, whether it's just how big a move is that was executed. But nonetheless, the camera changing even slightly just adds to the overall experience. There's a new additions showing a wrestler's health getting worse in actual gameplay, with your wrestler appearing red in the ring with bruises and marks across your body, instead of being told by an on-screen marker. The Royal Rumble has been updated and Championship Scramble has also been added as well. A moment of silence, please, for the amazing soundtracks that came out of the Smackdown vs Raw games, as this is the end. Well, it's about to be. Yes, there's still Sick Puppies, Skillet, and a track from one of my favourite albums of all time, Shogun. This title starts to introduce theme songs of wrestlers themselves, essentially allowing THQ and Ukes to become incredibly lazy going forward when it comes to the soundtrack for individual games. No longer do they have to listen to some amazing new metal and form a setlist that fills the game's menus with ambience. No, instead, you must listen to the French rap with Maurice's theme. This time around, the commentary team continues to be a revolving door of different people. Matt Striker and Todd Grisham are the ECW commentary team this time around, and Taz and JR is calling SmackDown. Michael Cole and The King are calling Raw. It's just so strange. So once again, all the new lines for everyone on the roster. Technically, some lines are before reread, but changed slightly for the new reader who's on screen and audio. Season mode again is on offer with multiple people to choose from. Shawn Michaels has a story about being beaten down every week and being old. Edge has a story about being the ultimate underdog, seducing his way to the top. There's Triple H versus John Cena, again, letting you decide whether to play as Raw or SmackDown before Big Show gets involved and states that ECW is here to stay, a fact that was undeniably not true. There's a female story this time around, including Mickie James refusing to be involved in the bikini contest, leading to a women's Royal Rumble match. There's a Randy Orton story mode, which is about legacy, so it's nothing. There's also a Created Superstars Road to WrestleMania as well. Smackdown vs Raw 2010 included Superstar threads, meaning you could change all of the colours of your wrestlers' gear from the word go. Truthfully, I felt that this was an absolute game changer at the time. I felt like I didn't need to purchase another wrestling game going forward, as I could just change John Cena's colour to whatever stupid bright colour that he had that month. Yeah, how wrong I was. It's something that we take for granted now, but yeah, this really was just great at the time. Championship belts are too small. Again, why? 3 games straight, God help me. Let's create a story mode, which is insane, and on top of that, the ability to share them online and have other people play through them really was just in our league at the time.
Apocalyptic.
On the surface, 2011 seems totally bland, but honestly, there was some interesting things that were introduced this time around, with the main improvement being the gameplay, which is great. The roster, on the other hand, was pretty much lifeless, containing a who's who of who's that. Yoshi Tatsu was included, Mike Knox, Jimmy Snuka, Lance Archer. There's really nobody here that just stands out as being an all too important inclusion. All of that apart from Rob Van Dam, who was included this time around, making another game where he's included and Jeff Hardy is missing. Just breaks my achy multicolored head heart. That being said, there is 70 wrestlers, including all of the DLC that came along post-launch. Now, as I stated before, gameplay this time around has a real punch to it, being delivered in the form of an actual fun, breakable environment. Yes, no more must you stand in front of a table and hit a button to have a certain move performed. This time around, you can actually score a move standing at any point of the table, and boom, you'll land your opponent through it or just around it, breaking the table into parts or knocking it down. This is excellent. Something that was desperately needed and really brings the gameplay in this title up a notch, though it is essentially the same as what came beforehand besides this feature. Grapples start off slow and change given how much damage your opponent takes. Also, now finishing moves can be hit at any point, no groggy state needed. You can also choose which direction your opponent goes when you land a move, being able to push them in the direction of your choice. Alright, let's talk about the soundtrack. There isn't one. No, genuinely, there isn't a soundtrack. It's just random people's songs from the entrances. A moment of silence once again for such a nostalgic and inspiring game series, known literally for creating an interesting music choice selection. Gone forever, never to return. From the Breaking Benjamins to the Zebraheads to Chauvel to Nonpoint, from Hell Yeah to Megadeth. Static X to Blackstone Cherry, you had it all in Smackdown vs Raw. Why oh why, Ukes and THQ, did you just get so goddamn lazy? Once again, the commentary on offer here is fairly standard, but shines through in the season mode, talking about the absolute ludicrous displays on offer on each of the storylines. Raw has Cole and King, SmackDown has King and Cole, ECW has Cole and King. I guess that makes sense. When the team changes every single month on TV, you might as well just pick one team and have them do the entire game. I'll be honest, the commentary is kind of clunky in this one, with words being added together to form sentences. Not as bad as Just Bring It, but not as great either. Guess it just goes to me calling them lazy. This year we have more Road to WrestleManias, with Cena, Christian, Rey Mysterio, Jericho, The Undertaker all having stories on offer. What's better about them this time is they added free roam mode, meaning you can walk around and interact with anybody backstage that you happen to run into. Adding an entirely new level to the game mode, having people standing around able to give you side missions and little tasks to take care of. Jericho's main beef is with Triple H, stealing belts and getting DQ'd. Christian's story starts in ECW before he heads over to SmackDown and rejoins Edge, giving us the Edge and Christian reunion we wished for all those years ago, even having some great comedy on offer. Cena's storyline is against Orton, as always, and even has references to stories that took place in the past games. Taker's story has you choose a wrestler and attempt to beat the streak at WrestleMania, which leads you into all kinds of different distractions, including Kane, Paul Bearer, all kinds of monks that are there to beat you up. Rey Mysterio's story is Silent Hill. He has amnesia and forgets he's a good guy. Universe mode this time around is pretty damn cool, being an overarching and totally all-encompassing element in this title. Say that 3 times fast. The matches that take place in your universe mode are advertised on your main menu screen and have a button that allows you to jump straight into them. So if you see the Hart Dynasty taking on Miz and Morrison, well, one button, you jump straight into your universe mode and you're there, ready to play it. This game also added multi-championship entrances, though the world titles are too small again. Damn it, Ukes.
Savage!
Alright, that's about it for Smackdown vs Raw titles. Somehow we have reached the end of this little experiment of mine, and what have we found out? Well, despite how terrible a game can be, part of it can still be enjoyed and carried on into the future. Almost 20 years into the future, in fact. The soundtrack and music brought to us by Ukes and THQ will stay with all of us, nostalgically listen to them again and again. So what happens next in the timeline of our beloved wrestling games? Well, the dark days are ahead for sure, but there's some bright spots here and there. WWE 2K14, the last major offering from Ukes, gave everybody one last incredible experience to remember them by, before the soulless, featureless, starless cash grabs of 2K came along and we found ourselves begging for the license to be passed on to somebody else. Unfortunately, that person never came. 10 years after the first WWE 2K game, yes, we're all that old, the 2K license is still held by the same damn company. Even after they completely destroyed their reputation of being able to produce good wrestling games, they somehow, much like the WWE itself, continued on. Kept alive just to spite the world, but soon came peace. With the recent 2K titles bringing back MyGM mode, though completely stripped down from what it was originally, they at least are beginning to try and give us something that resembles actual stories, something completely absent originally in 2K's offerings. But that's enough about the future. It's 2007. It's time to go back into the past, play awful games and stuff. Build here.
Alright, that's about it for Smackdown vs Raw titles.
Do in the arcade. Stuck here. So long. Still here, right now. Why am I still in the arcade?